I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. And today's video is a follow-up on my video from yesterday about how to tame the throttle on your, well, I wrote it in the context of a 2S tiny whoop, but anytime you need to just bring the throttle on a quadcopter down a little bit because it's a little too powerful and maybe a little too hard to control, this is the technique you want to use. And in my video yesterday, I showed a technique where you could do it with the Betaflight command line, or you could do it on a switch. I want to show you a couple more techniques in this video, a little bit more advanced techniques that take us a little deeper into how the Taranis really works underneath. Stay tuned. The first thing I need to do in this video is make a correction to my previous video and give some credit where credit's due. In that video, I said that the Betaflight command line throttle scaling could not be tied to a switch on your transmitter, and that's why I showed you how to do it in the Taranis. I was wrong about that. The Betaflight throttle scaling is tied to the Betaflight rate profile. Betaflight rate profiles let you have, well, high rates, low rates, etc. And you can tie those to a switch. So you can, in fact, tie the Betaflight throttle scaling to a switch. CurryKitten shows how to do it. I've got a link to his YouTube channel, his video where I could make you a video showing how to do it, but he sincerely, legitimately beat me to the punch on this one. I was just wrong, and so he deserves all the traffic he gets. Go check out his video to see how to set up different rate profiles, tie them to a switch. But what I've got for you in this video, I think, is going to make up for that and reclaim my title as the FPV know-it-all. Because what I want to show you how to do is this. I want to show you how to use this slider to turn your throttle up and down. Instead of having a 3-position switch where you've got maybe 100%, 75%, 50%, what if you could just dial it up and down on a slider and have as much as you need? That's what I'm going to show you today. And in the process of doing that, we're going to talk a little bit about how OpenTX is structured, have a better understanding of what OpenTX is doing underneath the hood. So if we look here, if I hit menu and page, the first thing I want to show you is the inputs screen. And the way OpenTX is structured is that you start with physical controls like the sticks and the switches and the pots. And those things can be used as an input to either the input screen or to the mixer directly. So the mixer page, which is right here, the mixer page is what determines what goes out each channel. And it basically can add together, subtract, and divide. And you do all kinds of crazy things with the mixer. But things come into the mixer, and the mixer determines what goes out on which channel. So you can see right here on channel 1, I've got, well, what is going out on channel 1? You see, I've got this little I right next, and then it says AIL. And if you've, let me just hit edit here. The source for this mixer line is the aileron input. But if I look, I can see here that the aileron input is distinct from the aileron stick. So you can see here there's a little icon of a stick. And the aileron stick means that we're taking input directly from the stick itself. And the aileron input means that we're taking the output of, there we go, we're taking the output of, if we go back to the inputs page, we're taking the output of this line. So the aileron input line is taking the aileron stick, and then what is it doing to it? Well, it's actually kind of dumb that they set it up this way, because if we look here at the aileron input line, you can see the aileron input line is simply taking the input from the aileron stick and it's just passing it through. It's not even doing anything. So it's really kind of silly to have done it this way. But the reason they do it this way is because on the input line, that's where it's very easy to set up things like an expo curve. Now, if you're flying a multi-rotor, you're not going to set up an expo curve in the Taranis. You're going to do it using the Betaflight rates or your Flight 1 or your KISS. You're going to set up your expo curve in the flight controller because it can, well, it's got a lot more flexibility for one thing. It can do these dynamic, these cool curves and just things that you can't really easily do in your transmitter. So it's kind of silly that they do it this way, but they do it this way because this all comes back from the days when we were flying fixed wings and we didn't have flight controllers to do cool curves. So the idea is that you feed the stick input into the input line. The input line applies weighting, expo, and other things like that. And then the input line is passed to the mixer. And then the mixer, well, you can see here again, the mixer's just passing. What is it doing? It's not doing anything. It's just passing it through 100%. And there's a little bit of confusion here because the mixer can do some of the same things that the input line can do. The mixer could also weight it. It can't do expo easily. It can't do custom curves. But so there's a little bit of a confusion here. Then from there, we go from the mixer. The mixer applies the output to the channel. And from there, we go here to the outputs page. And the outputs page is where we can limit the maximum extents of the channel, the endpoints in the center. And then from there, that's more or less it. So physical controls fed to the input or fed to the mixer directly. Mixer assigns them to channels and then to the outputs and then out to the receiver. Having said that, let me show you the technique to put the throttle on a slider. And I got to give credit again to a commenter on my original video, Archmage AU, I think is his name. He showed me a technique to do this directly in the mixer. See, when I first went to do this, I thought, okay, how am I going to get the throttle input line to move? If we look right here, hang on, let me edit the throttle input line, to move when I move the slider. And you see, as I move the slider, well, you can't see that I'm moving the slider, but the throttle line is moving as I move the slider. And that's actually stupidly complicated because what you need to do with the throttle input line is you need the weight and the offset to both change as the slider moves. And that's actually really stupidly complicated. I'm very proud of myself for having figured out how to do it. But then when I saw how Archmage AU did it, I was like, oh, your way is way better. So let me show you his way. But then I'm going to show you my way. Number one, because I'm worked a lot. And I want you to see it. But also because actually understanding what I accomplished with my stupidly complicated way of doing it actually gives an even deeper understanding of how it all goes together. Someday you might need to do it my way. Here's the easy way to do it, though. We're going to go directly to the mixer screen, and for your throttle channel, what you're going to do is first, your input source is just going to be normal. It's going to be throttle, just like, in fact, I'm only changing this back because I was screwing. So that's probably what yours looks like right now. Your input is just the throttle stick, nothing fancy, nothing silly. And then what you're going to do is you're going to long press enter and do insert after. And the source for this line in the mixer is going to be the side slider right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press enter so the source is flashing, and then I'm just going to move the slider, and that will auto fill in left slider as the source. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the multiplex mode. Now the multiplex mode is normally add, which means that this value is added to the channel, whatever this value is. So as I move the slider, the value is going to go from -100 to 100 on the output of the channel. You can't see that here. What we want to do is we don't want to add that, but we want to multiply that to the channel. Now let's just look at what we've accomplished right here just by making that change. So we're going to take the throttle position. So I'm going to start by centering the slider. So the slider is at, I guess that makes it at 0. And now as I move the throttle, notice that as I move the throttle, nothing is happening because the throttle value is being multiplied by the value of the slider, and the slider is 0. If I then turn the slider all the way up, the slider is now at 100. And that should make the throttle work normally because we're multiplying the throttle by 100%. And if I turn this all the way down, now it's at -100, and that should invert the throttle because it's multiplying the throttle by -100%. So you can see we haven't quite accomplished what we really wanted yet. To fix that, we're going to add one more line after, and we're going to add in the value of the slider at 50%. And with an offset of -50. And now, having done that, I'm going to take the slider all the way up, and the throttle should work normally. It's going from 100 to minus 100, so throttle works normally. And as I bring the slider down, it'll cap the throttle. So now the slider's at 50%, and the throttle's being capped at 50%. And as I bring it all the way down, now the throttle's just capped at 0. And that's what we want. So now, simply by turning this slider down a little, you can dial down the power of your quad. That's pretty cool. Now, there's one more thing that ArchMadeJU didn't do that I'm going to show you how to do, and that is you might want to put this on a switch. So you say, okay, well, look, I just want to make sure that most of the time I'm just flying with 100%. I'm not going to accidentally get to a race, have my slider be down, and lose the race because I was not being able to go to full throttle. So the way you can do that is by taking these two and making them tied to the switch. And I'm going to go down and highlight the first line and hit long press enter and hit edit. And I'm going to go down to where it says switch. I'm going to press enter so that's flashing. And let's flip this switch here, this 2-position switch, to the middle position. SC dash, and that will only become active when that's in the middle position. And I'm going to back out. And I'm going to do that same thing for this second line here. Middle position. So now these lines will only become active when the switch is in the middle position. So if I raise the throttle to full throttle, and then I'm going to put that slider to half, you can see that moving the slider hasn't had any effect on the throttle output as I move the slider. But if I flip the switch to the middle position, now you can see that the slider has the effect that I want of capping the throttle. So there you go. That's how you do it. Now I'm going to show you my stupidly complicated way of doing it, which accomplishes exactly the same thing, but the difference is that I stuck to the method of going through the input line. And you can enjoy watching me struggle with that. I'm going to be honest, almost everyone is going to, well, let's be honest, a lot of you are already lost. You can just just copy what I had down there. It should work for you. But a lot of you are going to get lost because it's really esoteric into the depths of the Taranis using global variables and stuff. But if you are a supreme Taranis OpenTX nerd, this is for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to CurryKitten. Again, link to his video down in the video description showing how to do the Betaflight CLI throttle cut on a switch. And thanks to ArchMadeJU for giving me the formulas and showing me, oh yeah, you just go through the mixer and it's way, way simpler. Thank you, ArchMadeJU. Happy flying, guys. Okay, now the real question is, can I do this with like a knob? Can I do it with a knob to let me dial it up and down? So what we need to do is we need to be able to make the weight and the offset scroll up and down as we move the pot. But they can't do that. The only way to do that, I think, is with a global variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the global variables screen. The only way to adjust a parameter in OpenTX in real time is with a global variable. And the only way to adjust a global variable, so here in the special functions, I'm going to add a new special function line, press enter. I'm going to long press and choose other, and we just want this to be active all the time, so we use on. And what we want to do is we want to adjust global variable. So this is the only way to change a global variable in real time. And we're going to adjust global variable 1, and the source for this adjustment, I'm going to long press enter. I'm going to choose a mixer source, and then I'm going to just move the slider, and that will fill in the slider here. Great. And then I need to check this box to make this be active at all times. So now when I move the slider, global variable 1 will adjust. And if I go back to the global variables page, you can see that as I turn the slider, global variable 1 goes from 99 plus 100 to minus 100. Now, that's not what I really want, is it? We need to do math. Because the problem is, look, if I take and I set the weight, I long press enter, and that sets the weight to global variable 1. That's all well and good. And so now when I move the slider, see, it's kind of working, but there's two problems. As I move the slider, the offset is not changing. The offset is staying at 0. And the other problem is that as the weight goes below 50%, the throttle inverts. What are the mixer sources? Yeah, that can be anything. Interesting. RSSI, rudder, throttle. No, but it can be a switch. Interesting. Inputs, sticks, pots, max, trims, switches, trainer, channels. Channels. So if I add another line here and take the source as the slider and the weight as 50 and the offset as plus 50. Okay, so now that, okay, so input I09, if we then use that as the adjust global variable, okay. Yep. So we'll set that to on and adjust global variable, and the input for this guy is going to be I09. Perfect. Now, what that should mean is that here in the global variables, global variable 1 goes from 100, to 50 to 0. Yeah, no, that's right. But it never goes to minus 100. Perfect. So then, here in the inputs, this one should go, oh, awesome, awesome. Yes, now the offset is doing what we want it to do. It's going from 100 to 0 as I turn it. So now all we need to do is we need to do the same thing for the offset using global variable 2. Oh my god, we're so close. We're going to get this. So here is the little tricky thing that we use to adjust. So now, the offset is going to be tricky. When the switch is all the way up, we need the value to be 0. When the switch is all the way down, we need the value to be minus 50. That's what we need. All the way up, 0. All the way down, minus 50. That is all we need to make happen. When it's up, it needs to be at 0. When it's down, it needs to be at minus 50. Up 0, down, weight needs to be 50 and minus 50. That's going to be it. That's going to be it. I feel it. Down is at 0. It's at 0, minus 100. Up is at 50. Or 0, 0. Damn it. Yeah. That's going to do it. Oh yes, oh yes, oh I did it, oh I did it. Look at the curve as I turn the, oh yes, woo! Look, see, now you've had, this is your throttle right here. This is your throttle right here. As you can dial it up or down as you like. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, that's so cool. Wow, that was so much stupid work. So now let's go look at the channel monitor and see if we got this correct. Okay, so throttle minus 100 to 100. So throttle is going all the way. And as I dial that down, the max goes down, the min stays the same. Oh, that's so cool. Oh man, that's great. All right, well there you go. I'll put that in the second video.